Hi, HR Nation. Welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we're joined by Ritu Shrivastav, who's a Senior Director of Human Resources at Gilead Sciences. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Chris. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Where are you tuning in from in the world?
I am calling in from the beautiful shores of Northern California. It's a little gloomy today, but we are our company is in Foster City, and it's about 50 degrees or so, but it gets sunny here, so that's where I am.
Yeah, we don't have that. It's just always gloomy. So the UK is just rain, and then if it stops raining, that's a good day. It doesn't matter if there's sun out or not. It's just that's fine as well. So at least you have some heat. Before we jump in, give us a kind of a brief introduction to your journey and background to where we are now.
I'm going to date myself. I have been in the world of human resources now close to 20 years. You're spot on. I've been with Gilead Sciences for several years in my role as a human resources senior director. And to your question on how I got into HR, I like to coin it as what it is a journey from the courtroom to the boardroom. After I got my California bar, I had the opportunity to intern at a lawyer's office, and my areas of focus were employment and corporate law. Many a times I would just sit back and listen to the conversations, and I would just think to myself, this is so solvable. It doesn't really need to be here. And I think that's where my past education of human psychology and organizational development kind of came to the forefront. And I said, you know what, I think I'm going to go into the world of HR and OD. Talked to my senior partner, and I was hesitant and scared and uncertain. And I was about to embark on a great new career as a lawyer. And but he was supportive. He said, it's great to figure this out now versus going through several years and being unhappy at the end of those several years. And so I went back and got my MBA in OD, and there's been no looking back.
It was meant to be. To be honest, I've interviewed over 300 of your peers, and I think I can name maybe 5 that actually planned on going into this profession from the beginning. I just spoke to an industrial engineer, the chief diversity officer of Barilla, and she was,
Wow.
an industrial engineer, right? And now she's the chief diversity officer of Barilla. She's like, Chris, I had no intention of doing this. Probably the role didn't exist back then, of course,
Right.
as well. But it's pretty fascinating. So you've made that transition now. Did you go off and study something else before you jumped in the deep end? Or what did that look like?
Yes, I went and got my master's in business administration, and with a focus on human resources and organizational development. I think there was also a study back then, I'm sure it exists, which was called industrial relations, which was a lot of labor relations and a lot of time and motion studies, I think. And so, yes, that I gave it a solid 2 years. And after that, I said, all right, I still feel pretty strong about going into this. And so, that's where I've been here.
At that point, you can't turn around to your parents and say,
yes. It's so amazing that you say that. But I remember taking a flight from here to the US. But my parents are in Bombay. Now it's Mumbai. And my brother jokes, he said, it was the flight of shame. And I went back. And I went and I told my parents. I was surprised. Initially, there was a little bit of, wait, what, right? Because everyone in the family has a background in legal studies, lawyers, judges, etc. And so when I went and said, nope, I want to go do HR and OD, they were like, is that a new branch of HR law? And I was like, no. But they came around and they were supportive. They just asked me to be focused.
In the role that you're now, I know you're super passionate around diversity and inclusion. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge you and say congratulations for receiving the Diversity and Inclusion Champion Award from Women in Technology International. So congrats, first and foremost, on that.
Thank you.
I know you're very modest, so I'm going to give you a shout out. I'm going to give you the shout out to everyone.
That's so kind of you. Thank you. It was very very surprising. I almost, someone sent it to me, and I almost remember thinking, I was shocked. I was like, wait, what? Me? I was like, what? But my first question, why did we choose someone else, right? It's like, there was so much opportunity here. And I literally had a close friend pull me back, and he's like, Ritu, pause and say thank you. So I was I'm humbled, I'm honored, and I can only say that I really aspire, and I'm very hopeful that I can use this platform to give back a lot more than I've received.
That's what it's about. That's what it's about.
That's true.
In this world where we're all pulled so far apart, how are you making sure in your own organization that people are feeling listened to, especially where there's no physical location, right? There's no physical togetherness.
Yeah, work is something I do versus where I go.
Exactly.
Right? And that shift has transpired, so to say. I'm going to share a couple of stories with you in terms of how we are doing that and what we are doing and how we are doing that. One of the things that we at Gilead are really, really trying, and I think succeeding on the basis of the survey results, I will lead with my data, telling us that we've made a dent, right? First of all, COVID caught us completely unaware, not just us, I think the whole humankind. I must say that we were woefully unprepared. I think we were frankly a little arrogant as a human race, saying, oh, we got this figured out. We can do this. So it caught us unprepared.
Humbled everyone. Yes.
Right. And it showed us that, you know what, you still need a plan and you still need to think differently. And so with that context, I think the leadership quickly swung into action. We were able to put together a team. I think it's called the ICERT, which is the, I'm going to kill the full form of that acronym, so I won't aspire to get there. But it's a team that actually sits internally across various geographies, and it's driving for solutions, and then across, I think what me and my team did in my vertical is we started running listening sessions, right? A, how are you feeling? B, what do you need? C, how can we help? And those were the sessions that we ran across, right? It was a short window of time. And then we rolled out the themes and patterns into actions. There are special benefits that were made available for working parents. There were special benefits that were made available for employees who are setting up their home office. Many of them did not think they ever would have the need to work from home, so they didn't have home office setups. Many of them were—
Or even the space.
Or the space, exactly. And then let's face it, do I need to rent this expensive property close in the heart of Bay Area, or can I go work from anywhere? And then let's equip the people with the information, tax implications, et cetera, all of that. And then the whole well-being and wellness side of things became a big forefront for us, because the fact of the matter is, what is important to me might not be very important to my cube mate or my office mate, right? And how I deal with overwhelm at work, and it may lead to burnout for me, may not be the way he or she deals with it. And what does well-being and wellness mean, right? And so there are credits that were put in place. And then there are these ongoing sessions that we have on meditation, on several other internal plans that we are using, right? In terms of neuro-linguistic programming. How do I deal with this situation at work? How do I mentally switch off or switch on to between home and work, right? And then we have put some, frankly, what I call brilliant at the basics concepts, which is we have the lunch hour blocked out. That's your sacred hour. Take your time, go spend time, be it for a walk, be it for a workout, be it putting meal on the on your children's school table, because God knows we are all hunkered down into working and educating remote. So those were just some overarching things that we did, right? In terms of a plan and then deploying those plans. We've done a lot of work around inclusion and diversity as well, which has manifested itself around wellness and well-being. I think they're both closely interchangeably related. But I want to pause. I'm sure you have follow-up questions.
There was a lot there. Yeah. I was like, when do I get in? No, there's so much to take in there. Congrats to you and the team, obviously having to move so quickly. As you said, there was no playbook for this, and everyone
exactly
had to do that. Where do I start to unpack? In terms of the communication, that was a big challenge. How did you go about communicating during this time with everyone, especially where as an organization, you've got people across different countries and different things are happening as well. How did you manage that? You mentioned doing all of these sessions. Were they like Zoom calls? Were they like videos? What did the communication look like? How did you bring this all together?
So Zoom is the vehicle of choice. And so, yes, it was Zoom, that it was the platform we used, and there were several Zoom calls led by on different times for different geographies. I think a diverse organization can really effectively segment, target, and position, knowing what works well. And that holds true not just for our clients and our customers, but also for employees, right? And so really leveraging that mindset is what helped us. And so, yes, we use those, and then we really equipped our managers and our leaders, right? Let's face it, there are two aspects of change. One, there is the micro, and then there's the macro, right? And the fact of the matter is, there were all these macro changes that were happening around us, but what can I do? And there was actually a campaign that we ran, what can I do, right? And the I was the I with a smiley face on top, and the fact was, what do you want to do as an individual? What can you do as an individual contributor? And what can you do as a leader to help the organization and your family and your workmates go through this excessive change? And that campaign was very, very powerful, because it allowed us as an HR to equip the leaders and managers with a playbook, as you mentioned. Here are all the tools that you can use. Here is what you can do in these situations. And then we truly mobilized our unsung heroes, as I call them, which is our HR leaders and our HR partners and our HR employees, who jumped in and helped holding several meetings, several platforms, town halls, etc. And over and above that, I think what helped was putting together, really giving employees this allowance around saying, here are all the tools, and you know what, we heard you. There is a lot going on. Let's make this tangible and actionable. Let's reassess the goals. Because a lot of the stress that is coming into the employee's life is not just because of what's happening, but great, thank you, Mr. Employer, for allowing me to work from home, for giving me all these benefits, but I'm still kind of driving towards those goals which were set up pre-COVID. So let's—
that makes sense, yeah, in the context.
Right? Let's kind of take that stress away and say, okay, we were aspiring to do, I'm making it up, 10. We're going to do 3. And these 3, this is our focus. This is what we're going to do. And by the way, we are also going to try and get Veklury out there, which is remdesivir, which was the cure for COVID. That has become kind of the basis for anyone who is in the hospital with COVID, obviously at a certain number of days, etc. And we were able to quickly mobilize a team for our sales force that was out there, putting it in effective hands so we can take care of, or help, if not care, with this global pandemic.
So it's so important as well that you mentioned about equipping your managers, because they're the front line, right? They're the ones that can,
Right.
you can't communicate just in a blanket email to all of your employees. You need
Right.
those managers that are there, because otherwise 90% of the time people just miss it. They don't know that you have all these incredible tools and incentives and benefits. They just don't know. So it's really important that the managers can be that translator and that middle person to be like, did you know this is available? Based on what we're talking about, this could really benefit you. And I think you're one of a few companies that I spoke to that actually reassessed the KPIs and reassessed the deliverables, which is really key. My wife's company did an amazing job at that.
There was a wise man, right? And he once said that during this time, right, during this global pandemic time, the way you treat people, that will be remembered for a long, long time.
Exactly.
And that's so true. And that whole sentiment has been coupled into our performance reviews as well, right? Gilead, where we've said, lead with empathy, right? Lead with empathy, because whatever this organization is going through, the whole mankind is going through, is unprecedented. And God willing, it should never happen again if we have learned our lessons. Then that has been drilled over and over into our communications, our trainings, simply every way that we can support employees, we are trying to do that. Because guess what? It is the voice of the employee that matters. No matter what you and I may say, no matter what the leadership may say, there is a voice, and that will be heard. And how you choose to support your employee base today resonates not just today, but several years out.
You touched upon something there is really important. That's the importance of values, right? And your why and your purpose, because no matter what's happening around you, the chaos of COVID, disruption, right? That's your foundation. So for me, that really helped me during COVID when things were all going crazy. I was like, what is our purpose? What is our why? And then that doesn't change. The context of how you deliver that's now changed because of the environment and what's happening. But that was kind of my rock. And I saw some organizations really live their purpose and push through. And I saw others where I was like, they're clearly just some things you put on the wall. They're not, and I saw, and employees can see that, they can feel that as well. Or like when we went through this, 80% of our revenue was coming from physical events, our CHRO roundtables. And so whilst 90% of my competitors were closing down and letting go of all of their employees, my perspective was, there's no one in my organization has done anything to deserve being let go of. So I'm going to do everything I can. I could furlough them. I didn't even furlough. I didn't even take government money. I was like, I'm not even going to furlough my employees. I'm going to reinvent the business and innovate. And whilst everyone's gone, I'm going to capitalize on that. So I kind of looked at it as, this is amazing. After a few weeks of being devastated, this is amazing. Like, and it wasn't my idea. I just brought a team together. I said, look, we can either furlough all of you and, and wait this out, but there may not be nothing on the other side because we don't know how long it's going to take. And, we're basically putting our livelihoods in the hands of the government and the world and just hoping something happens. And for me, that wasn't a plan. That was everyone else, right? There's millions of people on COVID. Instead, we all agreed as a team and, what are we going to do? And we came out of a plan. And then literally 2 months later, we actually had tripled our revenue in that month than we would typically have in a month due to that. And it was really aligning with our purpose and the why, and not my ideas. It was the ideas of our team. Even some of our new employees came up with some of the best ideas because that diversity, talking about diversity, that diversity of thought and perspective and approach to be able to push through it as well. It's incredible what you can do when you kind of focus on aligning everything you do with your purpose and your why, and kind of just block out, I can't control those things. I've just got to control the controllables and do what I can.
I think you touched on two things that are so close to my heart. And one of those is your strong values and principles, because they drive your why, right? And the other thing is, I think, the how behind those why, right? How do I achieve? Now I know the what, I know why it's important, I know what is important, but the how, right? And I think when you overlay inclusion and diversity, because if I put that in the organizational perspective for a second here, inclusion and diversity is a value at Gilead, but the fact of the matter is it's also a value for several other organizations. So what sets us apart, right? How is it different? And the fact is, it is the strong thought and perspective around operationalizing an inclusion and diversity plan, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the tying of the organizational values to corporate goals and missions, to having a strong, dedicated, and empathetic leadership team tied to driving those, right? Where you're literally formalizing an inclusion and diversity council, and you're designing and implementing those initiatives. The strong focus around education, where you're rewiring the system, you're rewiring behaviors, and you're making training meaningful, inculcating acceptance and acknowledgement, and driving towards a cultural shift. And then, of course, providing a metrics to kind of drive and track that overall progress of time. So I know you were touching on the why, but it just spoke to me around how we apply that.
And then it's this case of, from your perspective, you're not just ticking the boxes, right? There's a clear alignment with the business, and there's a clear ROI, and you can measure it. So, more importantly, as well. So, there's so many. I speak to chief diversity officers every day, and I can't even tell you the amount of them that I'm like, can you share some of the data? And they can't answer that question, right? Like, they can't actually, and sometimes there's no fault of their own because it doesn't have to support and they're buying it, but it's still quite shocking sometimes where you can't link that back to the business itself, and the data comes along with that as well. So that's great that you have that. Clearly you have the buy-in from the team, otherwise you won't even be at that stage if you didn't have the leadership as well. So that's incredible. Do you think that COVID has fast-tracked, or say pushed the work around D&I forward further?
I think the pandemic and COVID has definitely taught us a lesson, right? Whether it has brought well-being, inclusion, and diversity to the forefront, either of those, well-being definitely, but inclusion and diversity to the forefront or not, that may be, again, to your earlier point around context. What is the context for that organization?
Yeah.
Here in the U.S., we also saw several civil unrest issues, right? I mean, literally, gosh, it was not even 3 months ago.
It seems long ago, right? But it wasn't really that long ago at all. No.
right? And it brought so much more to the forefront. I think we've learned a lesson. It has driven collaboration between people, teams, countries, ethnicities, people of various backgrounds. And I think it has given us a great opportunity to reset, reinvent, and reprioritize our HR strategy. Right. And many times HR is kind of, just as you mentioned, D&I, it's like, all right, I'm gonna have a value, and I'm gonna hire a person who says, all right, I'm going to teach you about
exactly.
D&I today. Let me ordain you with this information, but with this knowledge, right? But the fact is, it's given us an opportunity to shed that administrative or that automated view and allow us to get into an agile methodology. I think HR is at that cusp, right? We are collaborators, and that line between HR business and geographies is blurring. And the opportunity again to collaborate with leaders to mitigate any side effects of having inclusion and diversity not at the forefront or on the back burner deeply exists. HR's always been that crisis manager and wellness experts, right? We play that role. Communicator, again, it takes us to that opportunity. It gives us that role. But I think with inclusion and diversity, we are enablers, and there is so much that we as, and I keep saying we, but human resources partners and leaders can bring to the table. For example, what I personally led at Gilead was I led employee listening programs after the civil and unrest issues. And we talked about, how are you feeling? Being a Black in America today, how are you feeling? Right? Being a brown woman with curly hair, how are you feeling? What are the discussions you're having at the dinner table? And then there are so many people who want to talk about what is happening out there. They just don't know how. They're managers, they're leaders, and they're like, Ritu, I'm not a person of color. Is it okay for me to
worry about what they might say something wrong? And
Exactly.
by the way, even I felt that way. My wife is Black, and I have a mixed race child, and even I was worried. I remember writing a post that I was going to post on LinkedIn, and then I deleted it because I was worried about, what if I say something wrong? Who cares about my opinion? But that was I was part of the problem.
We care, and please speak up.
Yeah, and I remember my wife, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I'll share it because it's important. And she came to me and said, "Why have you not said anything?" And that was a really hard moment for me, for my wife to say that to me. And I was like, "Well," I was like, "Really?" And I was like, "I don't know what to say." And she was like, "It doesn't matter. Just say what you're thinking. Like, it doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be, a solution. It just share your experience," right? Because I grew up, where I grew up in East London, there was only 2 white kids in the class, right? So that was my growing up.
You had a whole new view of inclusion and diversity that you could bring in. So
I remember walking into my first job in the city, and I was shocked that there was not one Black person on the entire sales floor of 300 people. That took me a few weeks to be like, this is really weird. But anyway, that's the whole side. So what I ended up doing that same night, she said that to me. I walked in my room, turned my camera on, and I just spoke. And then you can see in the LinkedIn video now, I was nearly in tears because I was so kind of overwhelmed by both the conversation I had with my wife and understanding how she's feeling, which was kind of hit me wow, right? How literally close to home, it's in my home. And then just sharing my thoughts and perspective. And I was really worried about it, but then to see everyone's reaction and support was great, right? And you don't have to have the answer, but I can only imagine so many leaders out there that were just so afraid of speaking up and saying something because they're so worried about saying something wrong.
Right. And that's that sentiment that you touched on, right? I am afraid to be wrong, right? But there is no right or wrong in feelings. You feel the way you feel. It's only about sharing your feelings in a way that's obviously in the realms of professionalism and etc. And it's just equipping people with the right tools, I guess, or with the right mindset on, and even giving them a psychological safe space where you can come in and you can speak and it's judgment free, right? And you can come in and share your perspective and come in and show support about how you feel and what you desire, right? I remember taking the floor being a first-generation immigrant here in America. And what does it feel? How do you feel about it? And what are the conversations that I'm having at my dinner table with my kids, right? And those are the conversations you bring out there. The reason isn't just to show vulnerability, because gosh, you'll agree, we all were feeling so vulnerable at that point in time, but it's about saying that it's about pledging solidarity against behaviors that are inconsistent with our values, with our whys of the world. And it's also about equipping, telling people it's okay to talk about it and help each other get through that difficult time.
Yeah, together. Exactly. And that, again, talking about kind of a theme of this conversation is that was another thing that really, I felt like brought people close together over that. Like, it didn't matter if you was Black, white, Asian, whatever, everyone saw that and was like, it's wrong. And we have to do something about it. Like, you know,
Exactly. Exactly.
In terms of your career, I always love asking this question to everyone. Kind of, what's sort of the biggest sort of challenge or hurdle that you personally had to overcome?
I think I'm going to answer that question twofold. One is, I think, the overall challenge that I'm sure it's not just mine, but several HR leaders have figured that is to, and then I'll obviously share one of my personal challenges. But one of the things that I think that several HR leaders have probably, well, I shouldn't say have, but I hope they have not experienced it. I experienced it, and it's been. I'm going to go back a few years in terms of this experience, and this challenge would have been where one has to walk into the room and you have to actually showcase the inherent value of the human resources function, right? Where you literally kind of jump through hoops to showcase that value, right? You have a choice. You can get into an organization. It's hard to make that choice when you're going through the interviews because God, you don't know where it is. There are cues and clues, and I can share those, but the fact is we all make choices, and it happens. You get into an organization where they know how to leverage a strong HR strategic thinker and leader, and your senior most clients and your partners truly value you and welcome you to the table. Then there are other places where the role and the function is just necessary evil at the table. That's where I think it gets very challenging. It's not a great place to be, right? And that's where I'm sure that's not a great calling card for many of my colleagues. And one comes to that cusp or that crossroad, and you're like, you know what? I'm not sure this is where I want to be.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the challenge from an HR function. And then personally, for me, I think it's very interesting because I am so glad to see the changing face of human resources with the I&D lens on it in terms of HR talent around the table. Earlier, it used to be seen just as a female-only function. I'm so glad to see that I see so many strong male allies in the room. And kudos to yourself, Chris, because you're, I'm sure, you and your organization are a big platform that's helping that. And then I'm really glad to see that, anytime a person of, say, Asian or Indian origin walks into the room, it's not that, someone from IT or tech support, right? It's like, no, there are various other functions that people from various other backgrounds come from. Really glad to see that changing face of human resources over the years now.
So are you saying that was a challenge for you then, walking in as a female Indian woman? Did you see that was that
very perceptive? Yes, it was one of those interesting challenges, right? Because there are not a lot of Indian women in the world of human resources around the West, and it's changing. Again, I think that the numbers tell a different story. I think there is an increasing trend, but again, dating myself, when I started several years ago, you'd walk into a room and you'd be seen as tech support. And it's no fault of anyone. That was just how they had been wired to.
How do you react to that? Do you call them out in the moment? Do you take them to one side? Like, not saying that they said that to you. I mean, but if you've ever felt that way, I don't know if there's ever been a moment where it's actually happened to you. But like, how do you deal with? Like, how do you address it?
I'm a big proponent of believing in good intent, right? People. No one wakes up and jumps out of bed doing backflips saying that, I'm going to go out there and
insult someone today. Yeah.
right? That's not the intent. It's good intent, and they just haven't seen a lot of people doing the kind of job that perhaps this person is. So they wouldn't have seen a lot of Indian women in the world of human resources. And the fact of the matter is that's okay. That's great. It's like, let's let you have a quick chat, or you just say, hey, no, actually, I'm your new HR person. How may I help you? Right? Is there anything we are talking in terms of the world of HR? Otherwise, yes, let's wait for tech support, right? And then there have been areas where leaders have come to me, and once we've got to know each other, they've come to me and they said, I am so sorry, and they've caught themselves. And
I'm sure most of the time that's what happens, right? They catch themselves. They're probably so embarrassed that they're like, you don't need, the best thing you can say is probably nothing at all at that point. And then they
pretty much, right? And so to answer your question, assume good intent, walk in, help people. And, and don't get me wrong, there will be a very small subset of people who really don't value you in the room. And then you try and get behind the why, right? What is the value? What's happened there? Is there a story to be told? Did something happen that I can help overcome that mental barrier that they have?
Are there any questions, going back to your first challenge you mentioned about the organization, that the value it places on HR as a strategic partner, or I don't want to say partner, because there's no partner. You're just part of the business, right? You're not a partner. You are the business. HR is the business. It's like when I hear the word HR business partner, then just a business partner. Doesn't need to be HR business partner. We don't have marketing business partner. We don't have supply chain business partner. For some reason, we have HR business partner. Sorry, it's just a pet peeve of mine. It's like constantly, that HR constantly having to justify itself. It's like,
exactly,
we're past that already. We should be past that. Is there any particular questions that you ask during an interview in organizations that help you define whether that's an organization that is truly, because they'll all say they are, right? I'm sure during the interview they're going to present themselves in the best light possible, of course. But is there any questions that you've asked, like for example, when you was joining this, your current organization, to understand what is the value placed on the people function?
That's a really good question. I think one of the things that I would ask is, what are your people goals, right? What are your aspirations? Where does this organization aspire to be from a talent and a people perspective? You will know the value that's placed on talent and on talent scoping. And then you kind of go into, hey, do you have a people plan, a people goal? And what's your view on that? And many a times when leaders look at you and say, they look at you and they have this look on what is a people goal? that tells you the answer. So I think to answer you just look at the strategy.
That's true, yeah. Because that will tell you everything, and also where people is in that list in priority. Right. And if it's coming from the top, from the CEO, and it's kind of like number one, then it's a good sign.
Right. Absolutely.
We're kind of seeing that now, aren't we? There's a big shift happening. In the past, it was like the CEO, CFO, right, and now it's like the CEO, CHRO. Like I'm seeing that, or the chief talent officer, actually, in many
companies. The CPO or the CTO. Yes.
Yeah, we're seeing a big shift there, because I think companies are finally realizing that it's not just about the numbers and about the business strategy; it's about the people.
Right.
So obviously people like us, but many organizations are still.
It's a bit of an epiphany, isn't it? It's like, wait, did that just happen? Did I miss the memo on that?
Yeah. Before we wrap up, looking back on your career. It's not over yet, obviously. But
got a few chapters, yeah.
Yeah, what would you tell your younger self looking back where you are now, based on your experience? What message?
It's so your younger self? It's so funny that you asked this question, because it's like my son asked me this last week, and he's like, Mom, if you turn back and do things differently, what would you do differently, right? And it's the same thing. What would I tell my younger self? I think and from my vantage, kind of similar. I think what I would tell my younger self is be more bold, right? Be more bold, and it's one of those things, right? It's love Disney, right? They say follow your dream, but you go watch a movie and you're like, that's great. Now let me get back to the
reality, right?
Yeah, right. And I would say that take more calculated risks would be what I tell my younger self. Though you ask my husband and he'd be like, all right, no more, woman, you've taken enough. But the fact of the matter is, like, I think I would just do more, take more risks, and frankly, be unafraid.
Mhm. Yeah. And then also last question, where can people connect with you if they want to say hello, reach out?
Absolutely. I would love to, first off, they can connect with me by connecting with you, because you and I are connected on
Yeah,
LinkedIn,
that's true.
right?
If we
So
need
that's
mutual introduction, I can do so. If not, they can reach you on
absolutely.
LinkedIn, right, as well, directly.
Absolutely. So they can find you. And then if I'm very active on LinkedIn, and that's probably the best way. And
Yeah.
obviously through the Gilead ecosystem at any given point in time. But this was really good, Chris. Thank you again for having me, and very nice chatting with you.
It means a lot. I say to everyone, there is no show without people like you that are willing to give your time to give back. So I really, really appreciate
Absolutely.
that. And congratulations again on the award and everything that you're doing with the team. Super excited to follow your progress and what's next. And also a special shout out to your incredible assistant, Suma, for all the work that she does. Those are the people in the background that no one really sees that do so much work. So so thank you as well to all of your
She's
help.
awesome.
For everyone listening, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, comment, share, subscribe if you're new. Also, connect with Ritu on LinkedIn. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day, Ritu, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chris.